All right.
Hello, Tony. I am so sorry. I realized that was definitely me. I gave you the wrong link.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, I'm trying. I'm trying.
What's up with my boy? What's going on? Okay. So Tony G, you haven't missed a lot. We just kind of kicking it a little bit. But I wanted to kind of introduce you because this is the first time that they might be seeing you. So Tony G has an amazing platform called King to Queen Podcast. And I brought him on this live stream today because I met him while we were on set for another podcast. So shout out to my girl Tiara with a little kiss and tell. But I really, really enjoyed hearing the way that he thinks. Very level-headed, again, balanced conversation. It's not a black and white type of thing. And so I felt like he and I were just on the same wavelength. So I had to give you your flowers. Thank you so much for coming. But yes, Tony, please tell the people a little bit more about you, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
All right. So I am your favorite bearded king. You understand me, Tony G, from King to Queen Talk. It's there that we provide the black, grown, and unfiltered perspective on life, love, and everything in between. And so I've had the honor of having Miss Tanisha on our show, our Mother's Day show, not too long ago as well. So shout out to you for, just supporting other content creators. A lot of times people try to hog the spotlight and try to make it, solely about them, but it's all about giving back, because if your light is shining bright, it doesn't take away from someone else's light shining bright. You know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate you for not only supporting me, but supporting Tiara as well. Shout out to her. I don't know if I was supposed to use her stage name. I'm sure she's going to get
I thought about that too. Money bags.
Right. Money bags. Sorry. Shout out to Mr. Hollywood as well. Shout out to all of them at A Little Kiss and Tell. So we go live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's there that you can catch us, and we talk about, as I said, everything from live hot topics that are going on in the world to love, life, and relationships as well. So we get into a little bit of everything. But once again, I appreciate you for letting me join you today.
Of course. And I just went live on Instagram. So if you want to hop on, we'll double stream so that people can see us on all platforms. So we're going to run it back a little bit. I know that you guys who were here from the beginning, thank you for being on time. We showed a little bit of a clip, but I do want you to see it because I think it is going to preface the conversation that we're having today. So the clip, not long at all. We're going to run it back again and then we'll hop into it. All right, John.
Have a problem with submission because they view it as it's something that's negative. No, you should be able to submit to your man because you should be able to trust enough in his leadership. And a lot of the times when you men say like, oh, I don't want you going to a bar, I don't want you going to a club, it's because you're a fucking man. You know what happens there. You know that men there just want to fuck, or there's weirdos that want to like put shit in your drinks, or there's drama, or it's just a whole ass environment that you can't be there to protect your female if it came down to it. 100%. You would have to live with that guilt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She gets assaulted and you can't do nothing about the man that did that to her. You would live with that. And women don't understand that. They think it's control. No, your man's being a protector, as he should. And as his woman, you should respect it. You should honor the fact that your man can see the dangers that you can't. Simple as that.
All right, Mr. Tony G.
All right, so I'm trying to go live with you on IG, but for some reason, it's not allowing me on my iPad. So I don't know.
We just have all types of difficulties today. The Lord, the devil doesn't want to have this conversation. We don't have it today.
Real conversation, and he won't let us be great.
It's a conversation that needs to happen today. I just sent you another request. If it doesn't work, then we'll just go on YouTube. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't see it for some reason. Let me refresh. Let me just see that. Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so everyone who is on my Instagram live stream, please check out the link in my bio. We are going live on my YouTube channel right now. You don't want to miss this conversation. Tap in. Hiya.
Yeah, I didn't want us to prolong this.
You're good. Okay, so going back to what we were talking about before you came into the chat, one of the things that I mentioned, just kind of tying into what she's discussing in the clip, is that I think an area of this conflict where women, we say we want protection, protect Black women, but we're resistant to guidance or feedback from men, comes from the fact that we're not used to seeing male leadership in the home, right? So you might have been raised by a single mom. You could have had parents who divorced, they broke up, your mom has primary custody. And so you're used to her literally being the head of the household. Like they say in the Black community, we're a matriarchal society, which isn't like a lot of the other cultures, right? And so I wanted to kind of get your opinion on that. Where do you think that stems from? Or what do you think about it being a result of women being the leaders in the home?
So I think it's a snowball effect. We can go all the way back to Jim Crow. We can go all the way back to slavery. I don't want to go too deep into that, but systemic racism plays a big part. The 80s epidemic, the crack epidemic plays a big part. I forget the term for the law that was passed, where basically they were rounding up Black people based on how they look in the 80s with Nixon and a few other presidents as well. Mm-hmm. And so it starts there, right? Where Black men, we at an alarming rate, we are only 12 to 13% of the American population, but yet there are more Black people in jail and in prison than any other race. So that should already speak to men not being in the home. And a lot of times it is based on their environment. It's based on how they grew up. It's based on situations that, sometimes could be out of their control. And it's just been a snowball effect of not being in the home. So as it relates to women, especially Black women, if I can make this very specific, Black women have been the backbone of our culture, of not only Black history, but American history. And so they have always stood the test of time and been that, behind the scenes, even when they couldn't be in the forefront, they still were the reason why a Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, these people were able to do the things that they were able to do. It's because there were women there that were able to propel them to that. And so when it comes to being in the household, I feel like, yes, it is true that there are a lot of men that have not been in the household, therefore leaving the women to actually be the dominant person in the household. That is true. However, I don't want us to get too caught up in what we see on TV as opposed to what the facts are. The Census Bureau actually says that Black men, Black fathers, are actually the most involved as it relates to children. They're the most involved as it relates to a home. That's what the census says. And I actually did a whole show about this. That's why I can recall this. And I believe the census was taken in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And it actually gives the percentages. And in the percentages, you will see that Black fathers are actually more present than our counterparts. But society wants to build this idea up that the Black man is not present, that the Black man is a deadbeat father, that the Black man is in prison, that the Black man is a gang member. Society wants to build that up, social media, propaganda, all of that. But it is factual that Black men are present in the home. I don't want to keep rambling, but I'll just say this. At the end of the day, when you know better, you do better. And so if you are looking for a man to lead your house, then you have to be in a position in order to receive that type of man, right? And the man has to be accountable for himself before he can be accountable for someone else. So that means he has to be responsible. He has to be walking in his calling. He has to be walking in his purpose. And a lot of times women will connect with men that are not aligned with their purpose. Therefore, they will follow someone who doesn't have any direction themselves. So we have to have accountability on both ends.
I apologize if you guys hear noise in the background. They're literally power washing my apartment in this exact moment. My apologies. So I agree with you. In terms of the fact that, you know, there is media programming that makes us feel like Black men aren't as involved as they are, do agree with that. But I guess my question is, if children are not seeing that there's a family dynamic, the man can be involved, but they live separately, for example.
Okay.
Is that still playing a role in the way that we are able to interact when it comes to our relationships and our families? Because if I grew up with parents who split, which I did, right? So my parents split when I was 10. And so I saw them in two separate dynamics after a while. Mm-hmm. I'm not witnessing that power exchange or just how men and women kind of interact with each other. And so when I get into my relationships, I'm struggling because I don't have anything to emulate. So right. I guess, is it enough that, you know, parents are involved, but separately, or should we be working to keep family units together, even if it's co-parenting in a healthy manner, but being able to see how both parties interact with one another? Would that possibly help the problems that we're seeing?
Yes, co-parenting, healthy co-parenting would definitely help. I mean, that is what we all should aim for. But I want us to also just take into consideration, right? If a man was to say, well, I didn't grow up with a male figure, and now I'm 30 years old, and that's the reason I act like I'm 21 years old, would that be acceptable? It wouldn't. Right. It just wouldn't. If he was trying to court a woman, if he was trying to look for a job, if he was trying to find purpose, that would not be acceptable. And so I have to hold our women to the same accountability that says, though you may not have seen it, it does not mean you cannot go and try to figure it out. It doesn't mean you have to know it all, but you can try to go figure it out. What does it look like if you are a single parent and the man is outside of the home? What can you do in order to demonstrate how a unit should work co-parenting wise? What can you do if the dad is a deadbeat? What can you do in order to find a male figure that you believe has characteristics that you would want your son to show or exude? Or what type of male would you want your daughter to actually go for? Find those type of men, because they are out there. And so maybe they won't see the dynamic of the love and lust in that way, but they can see how a man should hold a door. They can see how a man should pull out a chair. They can see how a man should speak to a woman even when he's upset. They should see how a woman speaks to a man even when she's upset, right? You should be able to see those things even if it's not in the dynamic of what we think should be the stereotypical, you know, parent bonding type of situation. The excuse may be there, but it's 100% unacceptable after a certain point.
Okay. So this question came up on my social media one day, and it was a question of, would you want your child to date someone who was like you? My hypothesis, okay, I think that the answer for a lot of people is no. So what you're speaking to, where it's like, you know, you're showing your child who you want them to be, I think a lot of people are not doing that, right? And so I guess it's like, how do we get to a point where, because you said it's okay to learn. What I would imagine, ladies, you can chime in, is like, if you are a woman, you know that you're a little bit shaky when it comes to interacting with men in relationships. But then you come across a man who is ready to provide, he is ready to protect for you. I think that's intimidating for a lot of women. And so we have these complaints where it's like, okay, I can't find someone who wants to protect me. But I think subconsciously, sometimes we might gravitate or entertain men like that because we know that we feel we're not ready for a man who is ready to do those things. So I guess from a male's perspective, if a woman, she wants to be with you, but she just feels like her experience in that regard is lacking, she's insecure in that area, how can she communicate that to you so that you know that she wants to work toward it, but she feels like she's not quite equipped to do so?
Well, before you communicate it to me or to a man that you are pursuing, how about you work on the relationships with the men already in your life? So you can actually use them as practice on how you should converse and interact with a man, right? So if you get the practice from your father, if you get the practice from your uncle, the practice from your brother, the practice from your platonic friend, you will build up knowledge and understanding and compassion on how you should deal with the person that you are pursuing as a mate. And so now, how do you speak to a man that is walking into his purpose when you are still trying to figure out how to receive that type of man? Well, you simply communicate. You communicate that, hey, I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have it all together. I'm still trying to figure it out. And I don't think that most men put such a heavy weight on women as it relates to having it figured out. Right. I think that a lot of times women say they want the man with the six figures. They want the man with the great job. They want the man with the house. They want the man. It's like there's a whole laundry list of this man needs to have it together. Right. And a lot of times men are still trying to figure it out too. We're trying to figure it out. And I don't want to go too far left, but I heard someone say that they posed the question, could a woman date a man who was still learning how to lead? A lot of women said no. But then I would pose the question, if you are a mother raising a child, did you already know how to be a mother, or did you have to figure it out as you went?
Yeah.
You had to figure it out as you go, because there's no manual that says this is how you should be a mother. There's no manual that says this is how you should be a woman. And we already spoke about, we know that there's a deficit, as it relates to men being in the home. So men who are the good men are still trying to figure out something that they may not have seen growing up. So now they have to have the responsibility of learning how to be a man and operate as a man, and then learn how to operate as a significant other, a husband, then a father, and things like that. You know what I'm saying? And so know that it's a journey. And so as it relates to the women, know that it's okay to be on a journey towards healing, be on a journey towards being better. And if you communicate that and say, hey, I'm still trying to figure it out, I'm on a journey in order to accomplish being the best version of myself. If the man is for you, then he's going to understand that. And he's going to exemplify compassion in order to show you in those times where you may have a vulnerable moment. You may have a moment of falling back to the person, that you once were. You may have a moment of dealing with trauma and, being triggered in those times of trauma. If you communicate that, the man can then say, okay, I see where you're at. I see what's going on. Let's talk about it. But you as the woman have to communicate that, because if not, we're going to say you're crazy. And if I'm being honest, we're going wham, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and go about it.
So I want to tap into some of these comments because y'all saying some heat, so I appreciate it. So I want to first start with Tara's comment. So Tara says, most skip over learning how to be a friend in platonic relationships first. So I think it's like you got to find your middle ground, because I'm an advocate for working on yourself before you enter a relationship. But what I have learned, re-entering the dating pool, is that there's some things that you're not going to really be able to kind of test what you've been working on or see if you've had that growth until you're actually in it, right? So I can do all these things while I'm single, but then when I bring someone else into my life, I'm like, okay, wait, I still need to work on these things, and I need to learn how to do it with another person. Now, to Tara's point, should we be having that learning phase with one another, giving each other grace as friends? So should we be starting as friends, working on ourselves separately, and then coming together into a relationship? Or do you think that people should just kind of enter the relationship and figure things out as they go along?
So I think it's for different strokes for different folks, in my opinion, right? I'm going to use myself as an example. All right. So I'm currently in a relationship, right? I knew my girlfriend approximately 6 months prior to us making it official. Okay. For some people, you know, that's not long enough. Maybe they need a year. Maybe they need 2 years, you know. For other people, they're like, no, I'm dating with a purpose. If I know within the first week, we go together. You know what I'm saying?
Real bad.
Real bad. You know what I'm saying? So it's different strokes for different folks at the end of the day. I lost I lost the original question.
Oh no, so I think you did answer it. So it was
Oh.
a matter of, should we be focusing on, and this goes into so many different avenues, right? So another one, for example, is like dating a broke man, right? So there's some people who are like, no, a man shouldn't be dating until he got his finances in order, he's focused on his purpose. And then other people are saying, you know, well, you can date someone and just kind of build with them. My pushback to that is always, okay, well, I can be a support to you, but why can't I be a support to you and help you, you know, give you motivation? We can motivate each other as friends. Why does it have to be me in a relationship with you while you're broke, and then I'm supportive that way? So I think what Tara is asking is like, why can't we help each other in that regard as friends and then move into a relationship?
So I think we can do that. I do. I think we can be friends and work on being friends and then see where it goes from there. I do think that's possible. But here's the thing. I'll use myself again as an example. I consider myself to be a healed man. I consider myself to be a man that is walking in purpose, right? But I still have triggers. I still have those moments where my girlfriend can do something and I'm like, okay, I know that probably wasn't intentional, but I know that is a trigger for me. So I have to do some self-reflection in order to say, okay, this is a trigger. Now, how am I going to navigate this trigger? Right?
Yes.
So I can still be healed and then still have wounds.
Yes.
And you touch that wound and now I feel it. You get what I'm saying? So I relate that to and parallel that with the idea of having to have it all together, you know, not being broke. Now, I'm not saying go find a bum. I'm not saying that. I'm not
Struggle
saying
love. Oh, love.
but there are a lot of women that say, I'm not going to date a man that makes less than $70,000 a year, right? But then you make 30. Okay. So so all I'm saying is you know what works best for you. I can't tell you, you know, to go for a dude that makes a certain amount or a less amount, right? But what I can say is that money is not going to create your complete happiness as it relates to a relationship. Can this man pray for you? Can this man speak into your life? Can this man educate you? Can this man motivate you? Can this man you understand? Like, there are a lot of things that go into it, but when we get caught up so far in the superficial, I think we tend to miss the mark. And a lot of times we even see on social media where these women will go and get the millionaire and then get played 2 weeks later. You get what I'm saying? Because they weren't connected on all these other levels. He doesn't know your love language. He doesn't know that you don't like gifts. You like words of affirmation. He doesn't know that whenever, you know, you're talking and your voice gets a little shiverish or quivering, that means you're a little nervous. So now he has to change the way he's speaking so that you can be receptive to what he's saying. See, if you have a man that is actually into you, then he's willing to learn you. And money is not always going to be the determining factor when it comes to connecting with a person.
That's real. That's real. I think that that's a big lesson for me. Just accepting that you're not always going to be healed. And I think I kind of touched on this in one of my videos. I think that a lot of women, people in general, but I'm going to say women a lot of women get stuck in this protecting your peace phase, right? Where it's like, yeah, you stick your foot in, you're like, oh, okay, in the dating pond, stick your foot in. And you're like, yeah, this triggered me, so maybe I'm not ready. And so you just completely withdraw. And you are right. Like, there's always going to be triggers, but I think we have to be intentional about having the resources to navigate those triggers. So I think that's big, which kind of goes into this next question or the next comment. So Nikki said, but that could also play out as a woman becoming codependent with being against not wanting to be the masculine energy in the relationship. So I think that what she's saying is that when you put it in your mind that you don't want to be the masculine persona, you might end up being codependent on your partner. I'm going to challenge that and say that I feel like Black women have a tendency to want to be superwoman, right? And do everything on our own, where we see receiving, which is something that naturally as women we should want, right? So men like to give, women like to receive. Think about our body parts, think about how it works. Give, receive, right? It's okay to receive, but I think that we see that as kind of like a weakness, where if I allow this person to do something for me, I'm codependent on him, or, you know, I'm seen as less than because he's giving something to me. What do you feel like? What is your experience with that as a Black man who's dated Black women?
All right, so let's get into this. So not my current relationship, but I've had about 4 serious relationships, right? In my lifetime. I'll say how old I am. I'm 37 years old. All right. So in one of those past relationships, I dealt with the combativeness of an alpha female personality, right? And so I'll give an example of what that looks like. We went to the Jeezy concert, the 10-year anniversary for Jeezy, right? We got there early so we could get our seat. You know, we were in a good space, good seats or whatever. And so when we got there, there were about, if I'm sitting right here, to the other side of me was my girlfriend. About 10 to 15 seats down were empty, okay? To the right of me were 2 grown men, okay? 2 grown men sitting directly next to me. Now, we got to about 5 minutes before the show was about to start. I look to my girlfriend and I say, hey, once the show starts, can you move down 1 seat so me and the dude ain't, you know, sharing armrests? And then if somebody comes, we can just move back into our seats. She said, no, I'm not moving. No, I'm not moving. I'm like, what? Wait, what? I was like, what? What you mean? You can just move 1 seat. I'm not saying move all the way down. We're just gonna move 1 seat, you know, so we got room. It's a big dude, big Black dude. Like it's 2 of them, you know, to the other side of me. And so I was like, okay, I want to have a good day. I'm sure y'all been there in those type of relationships. I want to have a good day. I got to pick and choose my battle. Okay, so I'm sitting there. 5 minutes go by, lights come on, show starts. The dude looks at me and says, hey, do y'all mind if y'all move down just 1 seat so we got a little room right here? She says, okay, no problem. She almost got left at the Fox.
How did that make you feel? I would have been so agitated by that.
I was. The only reason I made it through is because I had other family members that were there, and, you know, they were coming, having a good time over, you know, in our area or whatever. And then Andre 3000, like, it was just a bunch of people like out that I hadn't seen before. So, but after the show, it was an argument instantly. Yeah. And so I say that to say I've been there. I've dealt with that type of woman. But what I found out was she actually had her father in her life, but her father was outside of the home. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And then her mother, of course, she grew up in the same house with her mother. Her mother was the provider. Her mother was the person that led that household. Though she was still able to see her father, he was not in the house. And so those type of personalities existed not only with her, but with her mother and other people within her family. Here's the thing. As a man who does have a dominant personality, that doesn't work for me. Right. However, there could be other men who are not as dominant that personality could work for. Mm-hmm. So I'm not here to tell women not or to be dominant or alpha-like. What I will say is be what you want to be in order to attract what you want to attract. Mm. So go ahead. If you're looking for a beta, mm-hmm. then continue to be the alpha. right? But if you're going to be an alpha-like personality, and I'll use my current situation, my girlfriend has an alpha-like personality. My girlfriend, her 9 to 5 job, she has at least 200 people that report directly to her, right? So she is a boss. However, in our dynamic, that's not how she shows up. She operates within her femininity, right? She operates in ways that inspire me, to even say, if I don't know something, babe, go ahead and do that. Take the lead on that. You got that. I don't know that. Because I'll close it with this. The president of the United States does not know everything, right? He has a cabinet of people that specialize in certain things and situations, right? And so, as a leader, as a person who's comfortable being an alpha-like personality, you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Know when to sit back and allow your woman to lead, and your woman has to be comfortable with you leading. But it has to be a give and take if you're going to both be an alpha-like personality.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And Nikki, you hit this right on the head. She said that it's knowing about balance, right? And I think that there are going to be times where we kind of shift between different energies, right? Between masculine and feminine. It's not always set in stone that I'm going to be 100% feminine. We have to be able to adjust.
Right.
But I think that the psychology in me is coming out. So I think that this being stuck in this masculine state, or what people would call a wounded feminine energy, a lot of it is tied to trauma, right? And I think that we kind of feel better about this, or it makes our ego feel better to say, well, I'm not going to do this because you're controlling instead of, well, I can't operate in the way that I naturally want to behave because I have traumas, right? So even kind of thinking about your ex, where you were like, her father was present, but he was separate. Same case with my parents. But because father might have been in and out, whatever the case may be, it creates an insecure attachment as a child, right? Because like you don't know if your parent is coming or going. They might have been toxic, whatever the case may be. And people who have those type of traumas, insecure attachments with their parents, they have very, very rigid boundaries, right? Very rigid. So it's like, nothing in my life I had control over it, but the one thing I can control is the way that I allow people to show up in my life. I can control my career. I can dominate in so many other areas because I'm compensating for what was kind of taken from me as a child, or when I was being brought up. And so I feel like that is a big thing that we just need to do that shadow work and understand, because a lot of this I think is a trauma response. But I believe that feminism and other things that we're seeing in the media, it kind of eliminates that type of shadow work where we recognize those things, because it's normalized to be like, you can do it too, you don't need a man to help you. But all of those things are happening in our head subconsciously.
And here's the thing, maybe you could do it without a man, but do you want to do it without a man?
Right.
I think that's what we have to understand. Maybe there's people out there who are not looking for a relationship. Maybe there are people out there who want to be single and want to dominate their space, and they are content with that. But for the person that is wanting to actually connect with another person, even as an alpha-like male, you still have to have some type of femininity characteristics. And I think a lot of men are scared to admit that. But here's the thing. If I always went to my old lady talking about, hey, do this, do that, do this, she's not going to respond to that. So I have to be able to connect to her femininity. I have to, if she wants to sit and, my girl don't really watch TV like that, but if she wants to sit and watch TV and watch, some sappy movies, I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to do what's necessary in order to connect to her on that level. But you have to be comfortable within your masculinity. And a lot of men seem to not be comfortable with their masculinity, just like a lot of females are not comfortable in their femininity.
Speak on it. So I want to expand on that. But what I will say, kind of going back to what you said before, I think that there are people who are out there and they're like, yo, I just want to be single. I want to do my own thing. Shout out to Tara. My girl Tara is big on that. Like I'm living my best life. I'm my own soulmate, and I get that and I respect it. But are those the people who are online saying that men are not protecting women, right? So then it's like you have a clash of beliefs, or it's like, okay, you're set in the fact, like the way that you're operating is that of a person who probably would benefit from being single. But at the same time, you're like, but you guys won't protect me. And it's like, well, you're not aligning. The way that you're moving isn't aligning with what it is that you want. And I think that's the problem.
Yep. You have to be in position to receive, right? If you have a type of energy that says leave me alone, people are going to leave you alone. If your energy says that you don't have time for no man, then men are not going to make time for you, right? So whatever you are wanting to receive, you have to actually reflect that. So if you're wanting a healed person, you have to reflect being healed. If you're wanting a person that is walking in purpose, you have to reflect being a person of purpose. Because here's the thing, a person who is healed or on the journey of being healed, they recognize when someone is sick. A person that's walking in purpose recognizes when a person is not operating within their purpose. It's very easy. Because if you are fully connected and tuned in and tapped into your inner self, it's going to be very easy in order to recognize that, because you know what those characteristics look like. And if you're a person that used to be unhealed, right, you also know what that looks like. If you are a person that's easily swayed with the wind, if someone says one thing to you and you're automatically triggered, now you're jumping out. You haven't healed. So a person that is healed says, I don't want to be nowhere near that. Because it's going to affect me in my healed state. You
right.
So that it works like that.
So, okay. I guess hearing that then, as a woman, because we talked about giving men grace as well, right? I think both parties should get grace. What is the cutoff point, or what's the middle ground where if I'm presenting myself as a healed woman, or you're presenting yourself as a healed man, when is it like, all right, you a little bit too much for me? Because it's like, if we're saying that you're expecting someone to come healed like you are, but we're also saying that it's not realistic for everyone to be that way, and you learn as you date, how do you balance that?
So you have to identify what your deal breakers are. You have to identify what your boundaries are. That's going to be different for everybody, right? So for me, my boundary is I don't deal with people that cuss at me. That's a trigger. Even outside of relationships, my brothers, no, don't cuss at me unless you want to squabble. You know what I'm saying? That's a trigger. Now, if someone on the street cusses at me, of course they don't know that's a trigger for me. So I have to navigate that, right? It's my responsibility to navigate that. However, I can set the boundaries for people that are in my life in order to say and communicate, you cussing at me is a trigger. And therefore, I'm setting the boundary that says, I will not allow you to continuously curse at me, because that is a boundary. And so for other people, you have to identify what that looks like. And at the same time, have grace, because also people are not perfect, right? So if you have somebody that, and just using me as an example, if you have somebody that naturally curses and they curse at you once, you can't be like, oh, I need to protect my peace. I don't need to be with you. No, what? No, you're wanting someone to change their characteristics that they may have had for the last 30 plus years. Right? So they have to reprogram themselves. They have to learn what works for you. For someone else, dealing with a female, a woman may say, I don't accept a guy who is not willing to take me out on a date. I do not accept, and I watched an episode of you on your show where you you said, and I don't know if it's changed, but you said a bar is not an acceptable place for a date, right?
A bar? Oh yeah, I mean
a first date.
Okay. I said Applebee's.
Okay, Applebee's. And so that is your standard. That is your boundary, right? There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're setting, but you have to be able to communicate that.
Right.
And if a man, says, okay, well, not Applebee's, but his mindset is, okay, well, let me take her to TGIF. Okay. For me, that's pretty parallel. But can you provide some level of grace in order to say, hey, I'm okay that we're here, but let's do something that will expand beyond, what I would consider to be basic, right?
Okay.
Let's go do something like bowling, or like going to a park, or going to, a museum or something like that. You have to communicate that.
For
But if
sure.
you're not communicating that, then you can't expect the person to live up to a standard that has not been established.
Yeah. So first, so you don't rock with Club Applebee's. So the thing about this is that I think it has nothing to do with cost, because I'm a person who likes more of thoughtful things, and that was the reason why I didn't like it. Honestly, I'll accept a dinner date. I don't particularly enjoy dinner dates as first date, just because I like to do things that are a little bit more fun. Something where I don't know, it's just something about like dinner dates just seem in general thoughtless to me. So that's what I said. I'm just like, dinner date is super easy, but it's going to stand out to me if I saw that you went on Instagram or you went on Google and maybe you found like a free festival and it's something that that I like. I like to paint. So maybe they have painting activities, something that lets me know that you actually listen to me. But if you're just taking me out to dinner, you probably take every woman out to dinner. So I just feel like the effort level isn't there. So that's the reason why I say that. I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that it's anything about the cost or anything like that, because I know people probably would feel a way about that. But that is why I say I'm against Applebee's. Okay.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you communicate that before the first date, or do you wait for him to say Applebee's and then now you're turned off?
So I don't think I would proactively say, by the way, I don't like dinner dates for first dates, because I feel like that could come across a little bit harsh. But if he were to suggest something like that, then I might recommend something else. Okay. Or I'm not saying that I wouldn't accept it, because I've gone on first dates, but I also have gone on first dates out to dinner. And then after we wrapped up the date, if it was a good day, I'll be like, thank you so much. But by the way, like, we don't always have to do dinner dates. Like, I'm cool with doing X, Y, and Z. So that is something that I communicate. But I just kind of wait to see how they're going to navigate the dating situation.
Fair.
Yeah. Okay. There was a comment that I saw that I wanted to go back to, because it kind of talked about, women giving grace for men and their masculinity. And so Baseball King. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Baseball King, we'll come back to you. That wasn't the comment. It was. Okay. Your previous comment. Women don't care anything about our journey as men. They want what they want, regardless of where you're at or what you're working on, because they believe they are settling if they don't get their way. How do you feel about that?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, where women not all women, some women put pressure on finding a mate that is already established to what they would consider to be a successful point in life, right? But here's the thing. We all have different journeys. And for some reason, not even for some reason, let's go back to when we grew up as kids, right? Growing up as kids, most girls are taught that, the princess is being saved by the prince, right? He's there to sweep you off your feet, and he's going to protect you and keep you and all those things. Women are playing house. You're looking for a husband. You have the little baby dolls. You're learning how to, cradle a baby and things like that. Men aren't doing that, right? So you're already being programmed in order to say you're looking for a person that is going to protect you and provide for you. And a lot of times there are women who are looking for a man to provide for them in a way that they themselves cannot provide themselves.
Where do you think that comes from?
Once again, I think it circles back to the upbringing of the child, of programming, as we see on TV and things like that. But at the end of the day, we also have to be real about this fact. As it relates to college graduates, Black women are at the top of the percentage list, right? Black women are at the top as it relates to graduates from college, okay? So that in turn is going to mean that they're going to more than likely have higher pay than most black men. I think we can say that, right? And so you can date outside of your race. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I say go find love. If men can be with men and women can be with women, surely a man, a black man can be with a white woman. That's not my business. You get what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, you have to know that a man is supposed to provide for you in ways that extend beyond money. A lot of times, as I said before, there are women who will get so caught up in, well, what kind of car does he drive? What kind of house does he have? What kind of clothes is he wearing? How much money does he make? But here's the thing. I'll speak for me and me only. I'm not where God has destined me to be. You understand? I'm walking in purpose in order to get to that destination. And so even at my age, I'm saying I'm not where I want to be. Now, I ain't no bum. You know what I'm saying? But I'm where I want to be. So if a woman was to pass me up, that's her prerogative. She has every right to do that. But understand what I'm bringing to the table extends beyond my paycheck, extends beyond my wallet. Because there are ways that I'm going to cover you that you probably never been covered before. You probably never even heard of a man covering his wife, covering his household. I'm going to provide things to you that are going to uplift you, inspire you, motivate you. In times where you're feeling down, I'm going to be able to speak life into you. I'm going to pray for you. Things like that. The intangibles is what a lot of people miss. And so go for what you want to go for. But at the end of the day, there are definitely a lot of women that have these high standards as it relates to money. And, you know, maybe you'll find that millionaire and maybe you won't.
I want to bring up a comment from Nikki. She said, but isn't that considered her non-negotiables if they're not willing to give certain men chances?
As I said, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. But here's the thing. You're talking about the top 3% in the world as it relates to millionaires. Then you have to break down that percentage if you're looking for a black millionaire. Right? And so maybe you'll get them, maybe you won't. That's on you. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you, money, we all need money. I'm not trying to discredit the idea of money. I'm not, listen, I want as much as I can get. I get it. But at the end of the day, do you have a man of substance?
So I have a little bit of pushback on this, right? And I hear you, and I agree. I've dated men who have money, very well off, and the substance isn't always there, or sometimes they just don't put in as much effort because they walk, with their chest puffed out, like, I'm a man who has money. I don't really have to try. My wallet speaks for me, and so I understand that. At the same time, though, I will say that I think that Black women are often demonized for wanting men who are financially stable or wanting men who would be able to provide for a family. And I don't know if this is just like an American thing, because if you even think about cultures where they have arranged marriages, you're not getting a wife if your family doesn't have certain resources. So that is a very, very high, that's something that they factor in heavily when they're thinking about whether or not you're compatible to marry their daughter, right? And I was having this conversation recently where someone was like, I think the woman made, let's say, 60K, right? And she was like, I prefer to not date a man who doesn't make more than 60K, because that's what she was bringing to the table. That was something that she kind of got demonized for, because their perspective was like, well, 60K like isn't a lot of money, so you shouldn't be asking for more than that. But I'm like, what is wrong with a woman having certain financial standards? Like, if I want a family with you, let's be real, in today's economy, like, there's a certain amount of money where we might not be able to have a family. If you're making 30K and she's making, let's say she makes 50K, in today's society, like, if we want to have a house, we want to raise kids, we want to live comfortably, that might be challenging. So why is it that women, Black women specifically, we're demonized for having those type of financial standards?
I don't have a problem with that. But let me ask this question. is what's good for the goose good for the gander. When a man says he doesn't want to even look the way of a woman that doesn't have a fat ass, does it work the same way? Does
That
it
is
work
how you guys are, though.
say it again?
That is how men are. There are certain women out there how men complain like women aren't good and they don't have these qualities. There might be a woman out there, but she might not look the way that you want her to look, and you're going to pass her up because you value looks, aesthetic. Women value money. And so it's like it doesn't make sense to demonize people for what they're interested in. I feel like it's just a never ending battle. Like I could tell you all day, you shouldn't want to go for younger women, you shouldn't want attractive women. Biologically, that's what you want, right? Same way, like women, we want someone who is able to financially provide. So it's like arguing these things that have always been things that we've been looking for. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let me say this. It's interesting that you give that perspective, but I also see men get demonized whenever, they're in the DMs of the girl with the BBL, or they're, commenting on the status, going for the girl with the BBL and things like that. Those men get demonized as well because they're saying that's what they're attracted to. You get what I'm saying? So I believe it works both ways. However, that girl with the BBL, a lot of times, at least from my experience, from what I've seen, barely has $10 in their bank account. A lot of times she was connected to a dude who, was the dude of the moment, and he dealt with her, built her up, got the BBL, gave her the diamonds, gave her the purses. Then they break up. He took the purse back, he took the diamonds back, and she stuck with the BBL. And now she got to give thirst traps on IG in order to try to make some money here or there. I'm just saying. So at the end of the day, yeah, you can have whatever standard you want to have. But also, as you alluded to, know what comes with a lot of men who do have the money. A lot of those men are insecure. A lot of those men are unhealed. A lot of those men are misguided. A lot of those men have not been taught how to effectively be a man, right? A lot of those men have not been taught how to effectively be a husband. A lot of those men have not been taught how to effectively be a father. And so now you've connected to that person with the ideology of this man is going to take care of me, and he may. But just know that it's possible that other things may come with that, and there's going to be a price to pay if you are connected to someone who is not fully connected to you.
Okay. So I want to kind of bring it back into the topic at hand, right? So talking about this dynamic of, again, wanting protection, wanting provision from a man, but not being willing to be receptive to said provision or protection, right? What is the middle ground? Because to be fair, right, there are some men out there who are controlling, right? So, and I think a couple people brought that up in the comments where they're like, it's a fine line between, yes, you want to protect me, make sure I'm not in harm's way, versus you just being controlling because you have insecurities, your ego, so on and so forth. And so I guess that's the part that we need to figure out. What is that balance? Is that subjective? Kind of like what you said, based on everyone's boundaries? Like how do we enter those discussions?
So, as you said, it is subjective, but dating is collecting data, right? I think a lot of times women are trying to jump from A to Z instead of hitting the B. And so you may find a good man, but that does not mean that's the good man for you. And so the only way you're going to know that is if you collect data and date and find out more about that person, right? Just as a man should date a woman in order to collect data and find out more about that woman. You have to see people in every phase of life. You have to see them through every season. You can't always see them when everything is going well and things are going good. And, you have to see them in the wintertime when things are, when things are dead, when things are messed up. How do you maneuver? How do you deal with depression? How do you deal with kids not acting right? How do you deal with death? Like, you have to find out these things. And so as it relates to, those type of alpha personalities and, dominant personalities and things like that, you have to collect that data. You have to figure out how that person reacts in certain situations. And you can't go in with the mindset of, I'm dating, this is the person I'm dating today and we're getting married tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times that's what the mindset is, when the mindset should be, okay, I'm connecting to you. Now, I've never been married, but I've been engaged. And I'm here to tell you that even dating for multiple years and then becoming engaged, it's two completely different things. Just like it's two completely different things when you're dating someone as opposed to living with someone. You get to know people on different levels. Each level is different. And so when you get to learn someone, you can collect the data and then say, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. And you have to be secure enough within yourself in order to say, this does not work for me. And a lot of times people are not secure enough in order to say that because A, they're scared to start over, or B, they're too insecure in order to use their voice in order to say this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, it's a scarcity mindset. I talked about that recently in one of my videos, and I think you are right in the sense that we are very focused on the end goal, which there's nothing wrong with being intentional, but I think we're so focused on the person that we like, there's attraction there. They have to fit this mold versus accepting them for who they are. So we're already kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because we're coming in with these expectations that might not align. And like you said, like maybe you think no one else is out there. Like you feel like you have to settle for this person. And that's why it causes that disconnect.
So what do you think about people that say that enter relationships and, have certain characteristics and they say, well, this is just who I am. This is how I
am. That's a pet peeve of mine. No, I think it is good to acknowledge things within yourself, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like when I know that there is something within myself that could be problematic in a relationship with someone, whether that be a friendship, romantic relationship, I'm willing to get feedback on it and I'm willing to work with the person. But just saying, this is how I am, I'm not going to change, that's it. I think, again, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're coming into the relationship with the mindset that you don't know how to compromise. How is that? That's not going to work. If you respect any person, I don't think that you would feel comfortable with behaving in a manner that is triggering for them or disrespects them, and you're absolutely resistant to change anything. I think at that point, if you feel that way, you have to part ways. Find someone who matches your energy, I guess.
I agree.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, because you said it changed when you got engaged. So what was the shift that you saw?
Well, let me say that I was in a toxic relationship. So let me start there. However, I will say that possessiveness definitely grew, right? As it relates to my time, it became, well, I don't go out, so why are you going out, right? Mm-hmm. It became like, okay, I used to travel for a living, okay? I used to do a lot of traveling, and so I would, only be out, I would go out of town for a few days, and then, I would always check in, I'm always calling and things like that. But if she heard somebody in the background, who is that? What? Knowing that I work with male and females, you know what I'm saying? So I think that in that situation, things became heightened. A lot of insecurities became heightened. And here's the thing, we all have insecurities. We all have them. So it's not singular to that person. But if you don't know how to navigate your insecurities, that is where it becomes detrimental to the relationship. And so, but on the good side, that was the bad side. But on the good side, as it relates to an engagement, being in that space, your intimacy level increases, right? Mm-hmm. And so your vulnerability increases. For a man to get down on one knee and propose, a real man, that's a level of vulnerability. That's why he's on his knee, right? It's in order to show admiration and acknowledgement to that woman, right? And so a man is letting down a certain guard in order to let that woman in. And so that by itself for a man is big, right?
Yeah.
That vulnerability is big, and not every woman is positioned in order to receive a man's vulnerability, because a lot of times it gets used against the man. So but intimacy increases, and I'm not just talking about physically, I'm talking about mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things as it relates to the engagement.
Okay. So I think this kind of ties into what Ty A. Smith said. What's up, Ty? He says, honesty and transparency are everything. People like to come with the person they want you to see versus who they really are. Keep it 100. It makes things so much easier. I wholeheartedly agree with this. I recently had a debate with someone over this, though. And I said that, one of the best connections that I've been in is where we were just like, all right, cut the bullshit. Let's ask each other direct questions. Like, what's your thoughts on this? What are you uncomfortable with? What are your insecurities? And like, we were able to develop that intimacy with one another. And I think we respected one another as friends, right? The pushback that I got from the individual was that focusing on becoming friends, it can kind of be a deterrent to a relationship, and it can kind of stagnate the progression of said relationship. So I wanted to go to what Kendrick said a while back. Hey, Kendrick, what's the difference between being friends before a relationship and being friend zoned? And I wanted to touch on this because I feel like this is a concept that women get, but I feel like there's a disconnect on the receiving end of men. And there's I think there's a clear difference between the two, where I'm saying, I like you, I want to build with you, but I want us to build a friendship while we also build romantically, versus I'm just not interested in you. So from a male's perspective, one, do you feel like there's a difference between the two? And if there is, how can we better communicate that as women so that you understand there's a difference between building and being friend zone?
Okay, so first I have to acknowledge Ty in the building. Shout out to Ty. He's always supporting King to Queen Talk. And the dude is doing great things as an actor. Y'all go check him out.
Yeah, shout out to you.
From Tyler Perry shows and everything else, the dude is doing great things. Okay, so I think you have to communicate. You have to be intentional in what you're saying. Say what you mean and mean what you say, right? So if you are a person, we'll just use us as an example. If I come to you and I say, hey, I'm really feeling you, I want to see where this can go. I want to, we've been friends for a while, or we've been around each other for a while. I want to take you out on a date. I want to get to know you more. If you say to me, nah, let's just be friends, that means you friend zone me, right?
Right.
That means I'm on to the next. However, if you say, I like you too, I want to get to know you more as well, but let's build a friendship first before we take that next step. That means you have communicated fully to me that you have the same intention as I do, and we are pursuing one common goal. But a lot of times, the communication goes everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so because you're not fully communicating, whether I'm not fully receiving it or you're not fully giving it, because it's not connecting, now people have different perceptions and are receiving what a person says differently. And so if you say, I just want to be friends, and don't say, well, I like you too, where does that leave me?
Yeah.
So you have to be intentional in how you communicate your thoughts and ideas. And I'm very good for this, and I'm pretty sure that some people dislike when I say it. Sometimes I have to say I'm processing. Give me time to process what you said to me so I can effectively communicate my thoughts and feelings. Because if not, it may not come out correctly. It may not come out in totality. And therefore, you're getting mixed messages because I'm not conveying my full thoughts and ideas.
Okay. Okay. I think that's fair. So we have a couple of comments. So every time I see your name, I do not know how to pronounce it. Zappy. I feel like the X is supposed to be a Z. I don't know. Please let us know. But says most men aren't really trying to be friends with women. Honestly, men shame other men for it and make it look lame. I agree. You know what? I agree that men do not go out seeking friendships with women. Attractive women. Attractive women. I think that if the woman is not that attractive, they'll be open to it. But I do feel like, you know, they might leave the door open. Leave the door open. They want to see if it's gonna happen, but it's up to the woman to respond to that or not. And so I get it. And I think that the issue though is like women do communicate this though, but some men just don't get it and they still try. At least I know that's been my experience. Like I have said, like, I really just don't see you in that way. And I think some men, like, they're very persistent and they hold on to that hope. So I think that's what happens. But what do you think?
So I am a straight male that is only attracted to women, right? So I say that to also say I have two female friends. One female friend that next year will make 20 years that we've been friends. Okay. I have another, we've been friends for about 15 years. Okay. Now, my male friends, even my brothers, have expressed attractiveness to these women. I believe that these women are attractive, but I am not attracted. Okay. So I think where the issue could come in at is you may want to be friends with a person that is attracted to you as opposed to being able to acknowledge that you are attractive. Right?
Okay.
And so I am able to be friends with those two in particular. I have other female friends or associates, but I'm using them in particular because I have a relationship with them. If they call me at 2:00 in the morning because it has happened, I'm getting out of my bed.
Okay.
That's the type of relationship we have because that's the type of relationship I have with my brothers. They're like my sisters, right? And so it is possible to have that type of relationship, but you also have to have boundaries, right? So even in my current relationship, I have to establish boundaries with said women.
Of course.
I have to make sure that it is respecting the boundaries that are established within my actual intimate relationship. So it can happen, but you have to be clear as to what you are there for. Now, for a person such as yourself, you know, if you are an attractive woman, so if you're giving those boundaries, yeah, there may be a man that says, well, I really want to be with you, but if I can't be with you, then I'll just be your friend. I'm sure that happens to all women. You know what I'm saying? But I'm sure there are men out there that can say you are an attractive woman. However, I see us as being more friends than being something more than that. But you have to establish that.
How often do you think that happens, though, for real? If a man finds a woman attractive, you think he's not gonna try to smash? Like, he gonna be like, we just gotta stay friends, that's it?
There are a lot of women that I have seen that I think are attractive, but I'm not necessarily attracted to. And it could be for different reasons. Maybe your personality does not align with my personality. Maybe you look good on the outside, but you're an alpha-like personality on the inside to a point where I feel like your femininity is not aligned with my masculinity.
Right.
So therefore, we are better as friends than we are as intimate partners, right? So there are levels to it. And yes, there are men out there who are shallow that may not be able to decipher between, you know, what they're attracted to, what they find attractive and things like that. That is totally true. However, if you find a man that is walking in his full masculinity, walking in his purpose. Because here's the thing, here's the other side of it. If you actually have female friends are going to give you an insight and perspective into relationships that men can't give you, right? And a lot of times you're going to be able to speak to them in a way that you're able to let down some of your guard that you can't do with other men. And so really you should tap into you should tap into that feminine energy. Because a lot of times for me, I require that. I need that feminine energy around me. Whether girlfriend, whether it's my mom, whether it's my aunt, whether it's, you know, my friends, like I need that feminine energy because I don't like niggas like that all the time. You get what I'm saying? I'm just being honest, like I just don't. So I enjoy the feminine energy because there's a nurturing spirit that comes with that. There's an insightful spirit that comes with that. That intuition that comes with that you won't get from a masculine personality. So for the men out there who, you know, haven't reached that level yet, I say unto you, try it.
Yeah.
How beneficial it can be to not only you, but to her as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it takes a certain level of discipline as well. I think you just have to be really, really clear in what your purpose is and what you want. Because the same way, I mean, there's some men who I come across and I'm like, they're attractive and maybe they have a good amount of money as well. But I'm like, I definitely would not see them as more than just a friend, right? But that's because I've taken the time to kind of reflect on what's important to me, what my values are, what I decide to entertain, and I have discipline in that regard. So one of the comments said that, I'll bring it back up because it made me laugh. Trev said that heterosexual males are never going to want to be just friends with a woman he's attracted to. Let's stop the cap. So the question is that all heterosexual males, or is it just heterosexual males who are not as focused on their purpose as they are their flesh?
That's the key. That's the key. Because here's the thing. I can only speak for me. I can only speak for me. I can say that a person looks good or a woman is attractive or pretty, but it doesn't mean that's who I want to stick my penis in. For me, I'm saying for me. Now, let me say, if you would have caught me in my 20s, maybe that's a different conversation. You would have been talking to a different guy, right? But as a person who is in his mid 30s, I'm looking for a level of intimacy. I'm looking for a woman that has more than what just looks good, because I've already experienced what just looks good, right? And I am still recovering from what just looked good.
Right.
If I'm being honest, right? And so because I've already experienced that, I know that there has to be more to it. Now, if you're saying if you're a man that is a heterosexual man that says, oh, this woman is attractive, now that I got to know her, now I want to be with her, that can surely happen. That can surely happen. But what I'm saying is you can still find someone attractive and still consider them as being your friend. I would like to think that we have evolved and matured beyond the flesh and beyond the surface level of, you know, I just want to smash. I just want to smash you because you look good. Now, everybody's not there. I get it. Everybody's not there. But I believe that there are some people, some men out there that say, I want a connection that expands beyond just the physical. I want a connection that I can spiritually, emotionally, mentally connect to. And a lot of times, just because they may look the part doesn't mean they are the part.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jeffrey, I want you to clarify your question, but he said, what is the friendship based on? Either she's going to have to be masculine or you're going to have to be feminine. So I interpret that as him saying, like, in order for you to just want to be friends with a woman, like there has to be a role reversal, because if I'm operating in my femininity and you're operating in your masculinity, that means that we have to be attracted to each other in that way. Let us know if we're interpreting that correctly, but
Yeah,
if that's the case, I don't agree with that.
Because here's the thing. I don't even connect with women that are passive. I'll say passive, right? The women in my family are very strong, very assertive, right? So I'm naturally attracted to that assertiveness, right? However, those same women who are assertive also know how to operate within their femininity. And if you are wise, you would know that femininity will probably get you further than masculinity. And we can even go to the Bible in order to reference that, but I won't go too far. But we can go back to Adam and Eve if we need to. You get what I'm saying? So if you are dialed into your femininity, there's a power that masculinity cannot achieve. That just is what it is. However, I'm saying that you can show up as your full self, as your full masculine self, and she can show up as herself, but you can connect on different levels. And once again, just because she looks good doesn't mean you have to smash. It doesn't mean you, at least for me, at least for me.
Okay, so a couple of people are saying, huh, expound. So I think they want you to clarify when you say, and if you guys are asking something else, let us know in the comments. But I think they want you to explain what you mean when you say that that femininity will take women further than masculinity would, and the reference to the Bible. I think you might have to go there because they were confused. So
all right, so one example, I'm gonna go to the Bible, then I'll go beyond.
okay.
Samson in the Bible was known to be the strongest man on earth at the time. He was the most masculine. He was the most dominating personality. All the women loved him. They threw themselves at him, right? All of those things. He was the man. However, his strength was in his hair. His hair was long. The Bible explains how long and luxurious his hair was, right? And what they did not know was his strength, being the strongest man in the world, lied within his hair. And I believe her name was Delilah, if I'm not mistaken. Delilah was the woman that came to him and was able to speak to him in a way that other women could not. She was able to speak to him in a way and connect with him in a way that other men could not, right? And he got so comfortable within her feminine energy. He got so comfortable with the way that she was able to caress him, with the way that she was able to speak life into him, the way that she was able to look at him, the way that she was able to sex him. All of those things were characteristics of feminine energy. She didn't have to yell. She didn't have to fight. She didn't have to scream. She didn't have to do a tantrum. She simply operated within the femininity that God naturally gave her, right? And the Bible goes on to say that once she made Samson so comfortable, she made him feel in a way that he had never felt before. He was able to let down his guard and be vulnerable like never before. But the Bible says that she manipulated him in order to get his power and take away his power. And the way that she did that was by seducing him in a way that he had never been seduced. And the Bible says he laid down and went to sleep, and she chopped off his hair and took away all of his power, right? And so I say to y'all that when you actually tap into your feminine energy, that power has the power to break any stronghold of alpha personality that a man could have. I'm not speaking of flamboyancy. I'm speaking of in a way that says tough, ready to go. You know what I'm saying? Ready to fight. I'm ready to do da 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 da. But if you have a woman that can speak really to your soul, it's going to allow you to let down your guard. Now, that femininity can be used for good.
Mm-hmm.
It can be used for bad.
Yes.
It's on the woman to decide how she's going to use it. But when you really tap into that thing, that's why there's a person named Barack Obama who says that, yeah, at first Michelle wasn't on board, but once she got on board, he knows he could not do it without her. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are men throughout history that have said and stated that there's no way that let me take it here. Think about the black church. There are way more prominent pastors that you see than there are prominent male pastors than there are female pastors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But go into their congregation, the percentage of women clearly outweighs the percentage of men. Mm-hmm. If you go into the back and you see who's working in the offices, you see who's dealing with the books, you see who's dealing with the money, it is the women. And so there is a reason for that.
Yeah.
The Bible says that the man is the head, but understand the head cannot do anything without the support of the neck.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
I thought we lost for a second. Okay.
I'm sorry. Someone was calling. I thought I put it on. But the man, yeah, he is the head, right? Mm-hmm. But he cannot do anything without his support of the neck of the woman. Yeah. And so in order to move, you have to have that support. And so the woman, at least for me, there's a power that feminine energy has that a lot of men, and that's why a lot of men don't have discipline, because that feminine energy has taken over them and they don't know how to process that feminine energy. So now they're trying to stick everything that moves, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another example. I'm telling you, women, tap into that feminine energy. And someone, and I'll close with this. Some may even say, well, what about the men that are not attracted to women? Okay, but watch this. Where are they getting those characteristics from?
Yeah. So I think because Ubana, I believe it's pronounced. So I feel like maybe you still weren't getting it, but I think it's kind of like when they say we think about couples in history. So our ancestors, grandparents, whatever, where yes, the man, he might have been the outwardly facing person who ran things, but women understood, like, I still have a lot of power. I just do things behind the scenes. And like, kind of bringing everything full circle with you saying that femininity, that is something that is a superpower, because if you're confident in your feminine energy, I think naturally a man is just going to want to protect you, right? And so when we go to this whole conversation about women wanting protection, I think the biggest takeaway is that as women, I think we need to work on healing ourselves, right? So we talked about traumas, whether that be from past relationships, how you were raised, lack of father figures, whatever you didn't see that's causing you to operate outside of that natural feminine energy. That is what we need to focus on healing, because when you're operating within your natural state, people are going to want to protect you. But if it's just like headbutting all the time, friction, I'm always arguing with you, you say you want protection, but you always want to take the lead, like, you're going to get the opposite results of what you want. But I feel like we have seen, for one, people feel like submission and being feminine are synonyms, and they're not necessarily. That's not the case, right? They might go hand in hand, but they're two separate entities. And so I think we just really have to kind of unlearn a lot of these stigmas that we have about what it means to actually be a woman, to be feminine, because a lot of people see that as a weakness.
So let me ask this. Why do you think that the word submit is such a taboo word, especially as it relates to Black women?
Ooh, I think a lot of it is because of, to be fair, I think that the way that Black men perceive submission isn't correct either, right? And so I think that a lot of women are kind of feeding off of what they hear men say. You hear submit, automatically a lot of men will be like, cook, clean. That, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's one-sided. I don't have to do anything for submission to work in a relationship. And women are resistant to that. And I think that's why it might be a trigger word. Or it could be like, okay, I submit to you, whenever you say something, I just stay quiet. Like I might have a belief about something, but I'm just completely quiet. Where that's not the case. Like maybe again, you chose this person. So I hope that you chose someone who has the ability, the strength, the leadership qualities to have the final say. But if I don't agree with something, I might not be like, well, I might not say I don't agree with this, but I could say, babe, maybe this might be a little bit of a better option, right? You can still vocalize things. It doesn't mean you don't have a voice. But I think a lot of women feel like submission means that you don't have a voice at all. You're just blindly going after this person. And there's just, I don't know, it's just a lot of misconception there.
Gotcha.
What do you guys say? I mean, what do you think? I'm interested to hear what you think or what you all think in the comments.
Yeah, so I think I would piggyback on what you said. I agree with you. I think that we have a misconception of the word submit. And a lot of people don't have a clear understanding of what submit is. When really submission is just reverence, right? It's an acknowledgement of a person's position. And even if you want to go biblically, the Bible does say women submit to your husbands or wives submit to your husbands, but it also says in the next verse, submit one to another, right? So it's not just the woman submitting to the man, it's the man also submitting to the woman. It's simply showing reverence as to who you are within the relationship and within the dynamic. And so because a lot of people don't have an understanding of it, then it becomes, well, it means cook and clean. It means do what I say. But at the same time, if you're under submission and in reverence to that person, once again, like you said, you have to know who you're dealing with. Why would you submit to a person that you don't feel comfortable following?
Yeah. I do have a question because I've heard so many different perspectives on this, and I feel like I'm a little bit torn.
Okay.
Lavonda says she wouldn't act like that if she respected the man. Okay, so we're going to expand on that. A lot of women will say, I will be submissive for the right man, right? And I have always kind of dismantled that. And I'm like, that's just something that is in you at that time or it's not. You could work toward it, but if you're not comfortable with it, it's not going to work when you come across a man because you might get scared. We talked about that earlier. You might be intimidated, whatever the case may be. But I've also heard some men say like, their energy, I hate to say authority because I don't want that to be taken the wrong way, but their authority, the fact that they display leadership skills, it softened women and they were able to submit. So what do you think? Like, is it a spectrum of things?
For me, it is wild when I hear women say, I would not submit to a man. I'm sorry, how did she word it? Because I don't want to.
I would be submissive to the right man. So I might be in this masculine energy right now, or it might be resistant submission, but when the right one comes along, then I'll do it. It'll be like the
So what if the man said he's not going to be masculine until he finds the right woman? That sounds crazy. It sounds asinine, actually. Like it sounds stupid. Like I'm not saying she sounds stupid. I'm saying like if a man was to say to you, I'm not going to exude leadership characteristics. I'm not going to show characteristics of a provider. I'm not going to show characteristics of a protector until I find someone that is worthy of it. So now this man is walking fully in his femininity, looking for a feminine woman. How do you think that's going to turn out?
It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
So I say to the women that say, I'm going to be a masculine personality or I'm not going to submit until, it's like you have to be what you are looking for. If you are a person, I'm not saying go submit to just anybody. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is you have to exude characteristics that show that you are a person willing to submit to the right person. But if you lead with the idea of I'm not going to submit, that's going to turn away a man who is walking in his masculinity. If you're a woman that says, I'm not going to stop being masculine until I find a man that is worthy enough for me to walk in my femininity, it sounds crazy. That's like a man saying, I'm not going to grow up and stop acting like I'm childish and a 21-year-old until I find a woman that's worthy enough for me to act like I'm 35. It sounds crazy. I have to be what I'm looking for.
Yes. And that's the thing. And it's like, I think this is what troubles me with dating is like, I feel like we just have to know what our values are, and we have to say, I'm going to stick to this standard no matter what. So
Yeah.
I could be like a very genuine person, right? Very warm-hearted. Warm-hearted people get a bad rep because it's like, big hearts break easy, you get taken advantage of. But I think you have to say, regardless of what my experiences are, I'm not going to change the fact that I'm a good person. This is me regardless. I can learn to navigate it a little bit better. Maybe I won't entertain certain people, but this is my standard. And I kind of feel like it's the same thing, like conditional submission, conditional masculinity, conditional femininity. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It really, because here's the thing: if I'm a masculine man and I'm looking for a feminine woman, but you are operating in your masculinity fully and not tapped into your femininity, why would I be attracted to you if I'm looking for a feminine woman?
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm going to see what you're putting out. I'm going to receive what you're putting out. So it doesn't mean that you cannot have masculine characteristics, but you have to exude feminine energy in order to attract that of masculine energy, right? Once again, there are plenty of women who are bosses. There are plenty of women who are CEOs. There are plenty of women who are, dominating the workforce. So you have to exude masculine energy. So I'm not saying do not exude it. What I'm saying is you have to have a balance. You have to know when to give it and know when to pull it back. Because at the end of the day, you can do what you want to do. But understand, if you are masculine energy, you're probably going to attract the feminine energy.
Yeah. I want to get to these comments because there's a couple I saw. AB, I'm going to get to yours in a second. But Trev said, I'll make the argument that many Black women won't submit to men because they don't really respect men to begin with. I agree with this. I think this kind of goes into what we were saying earlier, where if there's something, I think you gave an example earlier with the woman that you talked about with the whole Sikh thing, like her family kind of had a like a cycle of like men just not being trustworthy or, things like that. And so I feel like if you are walking in with those pre-existing beliefs of men, absolutely, that's going to play into the way that you feel you can respect them or listen to them or allow them to have a sense of authority.
Or if they've been hurt. A lot of times people project their past trauma, their past hurt onto their children. And now their children are carrying trauma that didn't even actually happen to them. They're carrying trauma from their mother's mother because it's been passed down. Oh, men ain't shit, or men ain't, men are dogs and all this. No, the men that you dealt with are dogs. The men that you dealt with ain't shit. So it's not all men, but now you've programmed this child in order to grow up and be in their 30s and thinking that all men are trash, when in fact, not all men are trash. You have to find out which men are trash and which men aren't. Because just like there are trash men, there are trash women.
Oh, for sure. Everybody just garbage out here. Okay. So we have two comments. I think they kind of segue into each other pretty well. So AB says, brother, submissive woman has zero masculine traits. I disagree with that. I don't think that there's any person in this world who has zero of whatever the opposing trait is. We're all on the spectrum of things. And like kind of like what we've been saying, there's different times where you present different qualities. Like for women in the workforce, you might have to present more masculine traits if you want to excel, right? But when you come home, you might behave differently. But also people who are in like a wounded state, right? So they might have some sort of trauma that's impacting their masculine or feminine energy. They possess both. So again, it's not a black and white thing, but I think that's a common misconception.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I use the example of, like, if you are dealing with a woman's not always going to want you to dominate her. She's not always going to want you to lead her, right? You have to know as a leader when it's best for you to follow.
Oh, for sure.
You have to know when you don't know something. Like, I'll just use this as an example. My girlfriend is an educator, right? So if we were to get married and we have kids, and she says, I already know what the school system is in your county, right? I know what the school system is in 3 other counties outside of the county that you live in. This one in particular is the one that we will get the best outcome for our children. This is where we need to concentrate on. For me, I'm not an educator. I work in cancer research. So I am limited in my knowledge on what it looks like in the atmosphere or the environment as it relates to schools and things like that. So why would I, as a dominant figure or as an alpha-like personality, say to a woman that's educated in the field, oh no, we're going over here. I don't care what you're talking about. I'm the leader. I'm the alpha. I'm the man. It sounds asinine.
Right.
You
and for
have
me,
to,
that would be someone who's insecure in their masculinity.
exactly. You have to be secure within yourself in order to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And yes, that's a form of submission. That's a form of lowering your guards. And that could be seen as a spectrum of femininity. That could be you saying, I'm willing to step back and I'm willing to follow as opposed to lead. Because at the end of the day, yes, you are the head. Yes, you are the lead. But you can also lead people off the side of the road if you're not educated and well informed.
Yeah.
So if you are an actual real leader, a real leader knows how to follow.
For sure. You have to decide if you want it to be a partnership or a dictatorship.
Exactly.
And I feel like hopefully everybody is working toward partnership. So there's basically just going to be strengths that your partner has that you might not have. And if you think about a CEO, the CEO usually of a company, they have people who have different skill sets. They understand that they don't have knowledge in everything, but they partner with people who do have those skills. So that's important. I do want to bring this comment up because I feel like this is helpful for women to hear from men. So B-Class, shout out to B-Class. He was actually the one who sent me the clip that we used for this whole discussion in the beginning. So thank you so much. But he says, how should a man teach a woman submission if she is not that way, but desires to become more feminine and submissive? So I think it's good to hear from both perspectives. So men, how do you feel like you would coach women on this? But women, how would you like to be coached by someone who you care about, who sees that, you know, you might need some help in this area? What can they say or do to make you feel more comfortable with being feminine?
So it starts with communication. Simply saying, I don't have it figured out, like we said earlier, right? Simply saying, hey, as a woman, I am a dominant personality. I am open to finding a man that is willing to lead. However, I struggle with allowing someone the space to lead because maybe I've dealt with past trauma. So can you help me in this area? A lot of times, that's all it takes. A lot of times, simply communicating that you are working on this or you're struggling with a situation, allow space for compassion, allow space for understanding. And the man can then say, number one, if he's open to receiving that, right? Maybe he wants a woman that's already in that space. Because that's the other thing. What if he wants a woman that's already in a space of femininity or a space of submission, right? It's his right to deny it or accept it.
Right.
However, a woman has to be willing to put herself out there like that. Just as a man has to be able to say, I don't know how to lead, or I don't know how to lead in this area, or I'm learning how to lead in this area. Like I said before, we don't always have it together. So if you are just simply saying, I'm learning on the job, right? I got the job, but I'm still learning. So can you give me grace? Can you give me compassion as I learn on this journey? And a lot of times, if you are willing to be vulnerable with the person that you're supposed to be with a person that has a purpose that aligns with your purpose, then it's easier in order for you to make those transitions.
Yeah.
It's easier for you to accept when someone falls short. Whenever, she goes back to that way where it's like, she rah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, hold on. What is our goal? What is our purpose? Because how can two walk together lest we agree? So let's get an agreement. How do we get in alignment? So you have to have someone that is open and willing to accept you where you are, but you also have to be willing and able to communicate where you are.
Yeah. And I will say that this type of communication, what I think that we could do better with is having these discussions when we're earlier in the dating phase versus, you're going on these dates, men feel like they're investing money, maybe sex has happened. So both parties are invested for, I'm going to say, the wrong reasons. You know what I'm saying? When you can kind of nip that in the butt early on to determine if you are compatible with the person. But I think a lot of it just means that we have to step outside of our ego, because I feel like a lot of people are not going to be confident with saying, I'm not good at this, right? To admit to something like that, that's a very vulnerable moment. And so we have to learn how to be okay with one expressing that, but then also being okay if a person doesn't want to deal with that. And I think that we have been conditioned in this society, I don't know if it's social media or whatever the case may be, to feel like it's an insult if people don't want us, right? Like if we don't meet people's preferences, we automatically get offended. But we have to learn to be okay with that. And that is a direct correlation to all of us operating outside of our ego. So I think that's a huge thing. I've always said, like, if any relationship is going to be successful, you have to step away from your ego and learn how to have those vulnerable moments. But I feel like I'm not seeing that, because sometimes even if you try to have these discussions with people, I feel like people are very okay with talking about sex, right? For example, you said everybody likes to talk about sex. That's an easy conversation. When you start asking people questions about themselves and tapping into things like this, people are like, it's too personal, right? They don't want to share those things about themselves. And so we're operating backwards. Like we need a complete shift when it comes to that dialogue when we're dating.
Yeah, and people don't always realize that intimacy expands beyond the physical. Intimacy it really means being familiar, right? I'm being familiar and knowing the person. And so in order to have intimacy, you have to know what mentally makes a person tick, what emotionally makes a person tick. And my experience has been, the more that you tap into the mental and the emotional of a woman, the physical is easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Tiff said, it's not even just vulnerability, but you have to do self-reflection. Yes, 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 yes. This is what I'm really trying to like hone in on with my content. Like I feel like there's so much content out there where we're pointing the finger at the other person. And I don't see how people are making dating, relationship, marriage content and you're not focusing on self-reflection. It is impossible to do that. Like you just have to. You have to, because you're constantly going to be growing as a person as well, right? So even if you do make it to being with someone, the person you were in year one might be different than year 5. And so you have to know how to have that moment of self-reflection and figure out how that fits with your partner. So totally agree. B Class had another point or that I wanted to bring up. So he said, when a man does or goes to put his foot down for the first time in a relationship and the woman instinctually is resistant to his demand, where do they go from there? I have been in this situation, so I'm gonna say from personal experience, I feel like that's a moment where you as a woman have to check yourself, right? I have learned, like we were saying earlier, everything doesn't have to be a fight. So there might be some things where I'm like, I don't really agree with this, but okay, does it make sense for me to make a big deal out of this? Probably not, right? You're allowed to have your viewpoint, they can have theirs. But in those moments where you might kind of flip and you are snippet or, you're resistant to whatever, checking yourself and going back and be like, okay, in that moment, I apologize. I could have handled that a little bit differently. Like, it's okay to kind of pause and go back to have a conversation. So even if you slip up, I think it's understanding that it's like a work in progress, right? Learning how to communicate is like building a muscle. So you're going to have moments where you slip up, but you guys should both be able to come together and have those discussions with one another.
I agree. And it's also how you convey the messaging, right? Even the word demand can be triggering for some people, right? And so you have to know your partner and know how to speak to your partner. I don't know if I'm supposed to share this or not. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. Because my old lady is here in the building.
Okay, what's up, sis? Hey.
So because in my past relationships, like I didn't have the leeway of expressing myself without giving a buffer or a filter, right? Because my words were always analyzed and turned against me. So I had to be very careful in what I say, how I say it, and really use, you know, the white gloves, as they say, like the ushers have at church. On first Sunday, you know what I'm saying? Using white gloves. And a lot of times that's not how she communicates. And I'm learning that. And I'm still learning that. You know what I'm saying? Where I could bring something to her and, you know, I'm trying to give the buffer and I'm trying to, you know, like make it pretty in a bow. And she's like, can you just get to the point?
Yes. I struggle with that too. Yes.
Can you just say what the problem is so we can deal with it, move on? But because I've dealt with my past, you know, I've had those situations. I'm still learning that, right? And so I have to learn, and I'm still learning the proper words in order to use that would actually speak to her and not speak at her, right? And so we have to learn as men that when we say certain words like demand, as opposed to let's speak and find a common ground, right? A lot of times women will shut down. A lot of times women will act out. A lot of times women will lash out because maybe the word demand is triggering. Maybe the word demand says that you want me to submit in a way that takes away my voice. Right? And so we as men have to learn what will work effectively as it relates to our partners. And once you're able to learn how to fully communicate with your partner, which is going to be different for every woman, right? Well, once you learn how to effectively communicate, then it's easier for her to receive when you are putting your foot down, when you are saying, this is my boundary, when you are saying, this is my standard, because now you're able to speak to her in the way that she can receive, and you're not speaking at her, you're speaking to her.
I agree. And I think that, speaking to the women, right? So if you're in a situation where someone says something that's trigger, actually, no, this is for men and women. If you're in a situation where someone says or does something that's triggering, fighting that urge to shut down or lash out or completely run away, right? You have to be able to communicate how it made you feel in that moment, because it's frustrating on the opposite end of that. If somebody is saying something that bothers you, you're not vocalizing that. So they see that there was a shift in your behavior, but they don't understand why. And so communication is scary. I feel like this is touching on my trigger points because it's scary. I get it. It's vulnerable and all those things, right? But if you have somebody who really cares about you in that moment, they'll be like, okay, I want to understand what's happening. Tell me what's going through your head so I know how to be here for you. And I feel like that is like a beautiful experience. And then also just understanding like the person that we're going to be with, they might not come packaged to perfection, right? This is something that I've heard, but I'm like, it's really like starting to be drilled into my head. It's like, it's not about the person who shows up being perfect, but the person who is willing to consistently work to be what you need and vice versa. So that's just my little tidbit.
I agree with you. I also want to say this. A lot of times women will say, well, he should just know.
Yes.
He should already know this. But here's the thing. The equivalent of me already knowing how you should tick and what should move you emotionally and mentally is the equivalent of me saying what worked for the last female as it relates to sex is going to work for you when we have sex. It's not. It's just not how it works. And so I implore women to find that space that says he cannot know everything that you're thinking because every woman is different. So sometimes you're going to have to spell it out. Sometimes you're going to actually have to sit down and say, this is what I need. This is what I desire. And now it will be up to him in order to provide that. But a lot of times women say, he should already know. You want him to read your mind. And that's just not how we operate because men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Yeah, exactly. Like we speak different, like we want similar things, I would say, but we express it in different ways. And everybody has a different journey. So it's like you have to be able to express that. And it's like you set the standard for how you want people to treat you, right? So the fact that we're so resistant to vocalizing, hey, these are what my needs are, this is what I want from you, it's kind of counterproductive. But I think a big thing is that a lot of people might not really know what their needs are or what they want. And so you really have to know yourself. I think that's a huge thing.
Agreed.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we've been out here for 2 hours. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but I do hope that you guys got something from this. I mean, I think my key takeaway, as with everything, is that any relationship that we're in is going to be impacted by the way, one, we know ourselves, but two, the way that we are actively working to heal past traumas, negative experiences. And so I think, again, when it comes to this dynamic of women wanting protection, but being resistant to it, a lot of it is just working on, okay, am I comfortable in my feminine energy? Am I comfortable with trusting men? If I'm not comfortable with those things, why is that happening? And am I able to convey that to my partner? So those are all key things that I hope everyone is able to reflect on. Tony G, what do you got to say?
Or what I would hope that other people got as well. Be what you want to attract, right?
Yes.
So if you're wanting to attract someone that has understanding, be a person of understanding, right? If you're wanting someone that is on a journey of healing, be on the journey of healing. So whether masculine, feminine, once again, I'm not here to debate whether you should be one or the other, but just know you want to be what you're wanting to receive, right? So if you're wanting to find someone who's not toxic, if you're wanting to find someone, who's on a level of maturity that says, I have a masculine energy, then you have to be what that masculine energy will attract or is attracted to. So, just take those things into consideration.
Yep. And the last thing that I'll say, I'm always trying to, I think of last minute words of wisdom. Expecting perfection from people is usually tied to perfectionism within yourself. And perfectionism is often a trauma response. So I just encourage all of you to think about that. Any person who has been on a journey of healing, a spiritual journey, they understand how complex it is to be a human, right? So I think the more that I've learned about myself, I give other people grace because it's like, dang, that was kind of messed up what they did, but I could understand why they might have done that. Because there were situations where I might have done something that rubbed someone the wrong way, but I know why I did it, right? So you begin to give people grace because you understand. So if you're not able to give people that grace, I challenge you to reflect on where you are within your own healing journey, because that might be a projection of insecurities within yourself.
Agreed.
All right. Woo! So I think we're going to close it here. Tony G, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to leave his social media handle so that you guys can connect with him. He is doing great things. I love connecting with people who just have good energy here out in Atlanta. So I'm so thankful to have your energy tonight. Really, really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Once again, y'all can check us out every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on IG. We go live. We cover hot topics and everything in between. Also, you can catch us on the XOD network, which is found on the Apple TV, Roku, and Xbox. So make sure y'all check us out.
Yes. All right. Well, I hope you all have a very safe weekend. If you're doing grown things, strap up. Don't make no babies tonight unless you're ready. Okay. All right, y'all. As always, see you next time. Much love.